And good morning, my beautiful America. This is Common Sense America. I am Eden Hill. It is Monday, January the 16th, 2023. It is freezing cold here in Eastern North Carolina, and I'm sure it's freezing cold up in New York, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania, where one of our guests is coming from this morning, first thing. And then also from Washington, D.C.'s Project 21, we'll have Donna Jackson joining us in the latter half of the show. But I tell you what, we have a jam-packed show with two very powerful women of faith, women of conviction, women who are on the front lines wanting to fight for our nation, our God, our families, our kitchen table discussions, and the next generation. And on that note, I'm going to bring over right to the show my dear friend, Barbara from Harlem. She is coming to us from Northern New Jersey. She is a Project 21 ambassador. She is an author, a radio host, and a dear friend. And so here we are with Miss Barbara from Harlem. Good morning, my friend.
Well, good morning to everyone.
It's so good to have you. How is it is it cold in Jersey right now?
Yes, it's cold, but that's all right. We can deal with it.
Yes, we can. Well, as I introduced you as a dear friend, first and foremost, a Project 21 member, you are Barbara from Harlem. You are impacting the communities of New York, New Jersey, and the surrounding areas. And you are the co-host with your daughter, our Urban Story, which is on the Blue Network every Saturday at 3:00.
That's correct.
And yes. I mean, my goodness, I've said this to the other guests on my show. When do you sleep? You also authored a book of escaping the expectations of low expectations, escaping the racism of low expectations. And it's a powerful book talking about your amazing journey. I have the link in the comment section for people to go in and buy a copy if they have not. And I want you to first and foremost, let's talk about today. Today is Martin Luther King Day. Let's talk about his dream. How did he and your faith walk inspire you to get where you are today?
Well, Dr. King was a very spiritual, enlightened, and informative person. I mean, every time he gave a speech, you got new information. Mm-hmm. He did his research, and he really hit the nail on the head every time he opened his mouth. Mm-hmm. He was a dynamic orator. Mm-hmm. And he did some marvelous, wonderful things by shaking up and awakening the conscience of America. Mm-hmm. He made tremendous strides. And the thing I love about him is not only was he interested in Black people, mm-hmm. he was a great humanitarian. He considered all Americans as one. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that is something that we need to refresh mm-hmm. and remember how he talked about the content of the character is important. The color of the skin means nothing. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I mean, he has every place in history to be remembered, to be thought about, and to be discussed. It's sad that a lot of people now, when they talk about social justice and all of that, mm-hmm. they forget the tremendous accomplishments that Dr. King made.
Yes.
Along with his team members. They made tremendous accomplishments. And it just hurts my heart that some of these race hustlers want us to forget all of the accomplishments that were made in America because of the sacrifice of Dr. King and others. We must not forget.
My husband and I this weekend, we were watching some of the documentaries on Dr. King, but also, like you said, during that time period, what President John F. Kennedy did, what the Attorney General Robert F. Kennedy did, and what Martin Luther King did. They all did it together. They all came together. And
yes, they did.
And there was something, what a powerful force. And, looking at what the Kennedy administration did in that time period, it was a renewal. It was preparing for the next generation, which is where we are now. which is
Yes.
where we are now. Talk to
Yes.
me about what you and your daughter are doing on the front lines with your show, but also as you are just in Harlem, in New York City, working
Yes.
on the front lines, trying to engage the parents of the next generation.
Oh, definitely. What we do also is we hand out a packet to people on the street. The packet contains the difference between political parties.
Mhm.
It contains why we don't want socialism,
Mhm.
a copy of the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, a Bible tract, and what else is in there? I mean, things of this nature to
Right.
educate people, to let them know how important their voice is, how
Yes.
important their vote is.
Mhm. Yes.
And we've been received very warmly. We go to college campuses.
Mm.
We just do it randomly in the street in the Bronx, Harlem, Newark, and we just hand it to people, young, old, black, white. It doesn't make any difference,
Mhm.
because we want people to know that they're being a citizen in the United States of America. You have responsibilities, and
Yes.
you need to be informed.
Yes.
So, I mean, we have people. We were at what college? Bethune-Cookman, and
Oh,
all I got was "Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am."
now was this
That's
from
what
the
I got
was this from the students or from the
from
parents?
the students. From the students. Thank
So,
you, ma'am. I
wow.
told them. I said, "It's a Constitution, Bill of Rights. You need to read it. You need to study it, because your voice, and your vote are very important."
And that's amazing that they were thanking you.
Yes.
And did you get any kind of repercussions or anything from the school or from any of the
No.
leaders in the school? No.
No. We stand on the street,
Mhm.
and whoever comes by, that's who we get.
Mhm.
And when we are by the campus or whatever, we have the young people are flowing in and out, back and forth, and we give them the information.
Mhm. Mhm.
And all I got was "Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am."
Wow, that's powerful.
Yes.
One of the things I love about you, and I always remember this story when we first met, was you
Okay.
talking about parents in the city and how they were more concerned about their eyelashes and their
Yes.
nails than they
Yes.
were about the next
Yes.
generation and their kids'
Yes.
education. Talk to me about that.
Let me tell you, after my husband deserted the family, I had 5 children to raise.
Mhm.
I didn't have time to go to the nail salon. I didn't have time to get eyebrows done. I
Mhm.
had to work and put food on the table.
Mhm.
But one of my priorities was always being present at a parent-teacher association meeting.
Mm.
I don't think I missed any,
And you were a
because
single mom. And you
I
were a
was a
single mom.
single mom. I worked 2 jobs and had 5 children.
Mm.
But I faithfully went because I wanted the teachers and everyone to know that somebody cared for those 5 children, and that
Mhm.
was me,
Mhm.
besides God.
Right.
So I attended. They knew that my children had a parent, and everything went fairly well. And we were in Florida part of the time,
Mhm.
and it went very well because they respected me.
Mhm.
My children respected them. I
Mhm.
respected them, and we all got along. When we had problems, we sat down. I think Dr. King said, at the table of brotherhood.
Mm.
We sat down at the table of brotherhood and came together and did what was best for my children.
Mm. Well, let's
And
talk about.
parents need to prioritize. I'm sorry.
No, no,
They
you're
need
good.
to prioritize. Your nails, your hair, and all this can be done later.
Amen.
Get
Amen.
up there and be where those children are. Let those teachers see your face. Let them know that you are a concerned parent. I did it. And if I can do it, anyone can do it.
Yes. Yes. And that's exactly what this show is about. Here at Common Sense
Yes.
America, we have Barbara
Yes.
from Harlem, and
Yes.
she's talking about Martin Luther King Day. She's talking about being a Project 21 ambassador. She's talking about her radio show, her book, and being a single mother of 5 kids during what
Yes.
time period? What time period was that in our nation's history?
That was the 70s and the 80s. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
I got married in the 60s. The marriage collapsed in the 70s.
Mm-hmm.
So I was on my own.
So, talking about the kitchen table discussions that affect our homes, not
Yes.
what a current elected official puts into law or tells us what we can and cannot do, but what changes the hearts and minds of the next generation in our family is the decisions that we make at our kitchen table. It's the discussions we have or we do not have, good or bad.
That's true.
So let me ask you this. As you were raising your 5 kids on your own, what were some of the tools that you had to learn as a single mom in that time period, going from then to now? And what do you want to tell single moms and single dads? You just said, get involved with the PTA. Don't worry about how you look, be involved. But what kind of things did you have to really heartfelt apply to your daily walk?
Well, being raised in New York, and my mother had to work because she became a single mother after her marriage collapsed.
Mm-hmm.
And raised in New York, and then sometimes spending time in Florida with our grandparents.
Mm-hmm.
What I learned was discipline and scheduling are so important.
Mm.
Plus responsibilities. In other words, I was raised where I had responsibilities. I had discipline. I had to be home at a certain time. And I had just things that I had to do. So I raised my children in the same fashion.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
They couldn't be out when the sun went down. They had to be at home.
Mm-hmm.
They had to do their homework.
Mm-hmm.
And they had to do work around the house. They participated in various sports and activities.
Yeah.
On the condition that you did what you were supposed to do in the house.
Mm.
If you disobeyed, you did not do your homework, you could not participate.
Yeah.
And it worked with my children, 5 children. I didn't have anybody who didn't graduate high school. They all graduated high school. Some of them are college graduates.
Mm-hmm.
They go to bed early. They don't hang in the street all night.
Yes.
They learn how to dress like they love themselves.
Mm.
They didn't just put on any kind of rag because they represented me like I represented them.
Wow.
So this is how they were raised. When my children were young, they used to tell me that the other kids told them I was a mean mother.
Oh, wow.
But a lot of those same children that were right along with them are dead, prematurely, on the street,
drugged
out. And I can't say that I had those problems with 5 children.
Right. As a single mom.
As a single mother.
And during that time period.
Yes. So it was a blessing. Discipline is important.
Yes. Talk to me about your faith walk. Talk to me about that. Talk to me how, because I see it in you. You don't even have to say that you're a woman of faith. It just like light shining all around Barbara from Harlem, But talk to me about that. How did you grow in your faith from that time period of seeing Dr. King, seeing what he was doing at the very forefront of American history in the 1960s with the Kennedys and how they were really thinking about the next generation? Talk to me about your faith. Did that impact you or was it something else?
Well, my initial impact was because of my mother and my grandmother. Mm-hmm. They believed in taking me to church. Yeah. They took all of us to church. I learned in church how to love your neighbor.
Yes.
I learned that even if my mother or my grandmother or my father couldn't see what I was doing, God could see and hear everything that I did.
Mm-hmm.
That spared me
Right.
from falling through the cracks of society.
Mm-hmm.
Because, of course, I was offered drugs. I was offered an alternative lifestyle. I was offered a lot of things.
Right.
But those facts kept me from falling through the cracks.
Do you think that is the issue that we have with today, that the churches are not rising up?
That's
And
right.
and all of that, the cracks of society and the culture wars have been opened
Yeah.
to what now? To the CRT?
Yes. Yes. I mean, our churches, as far as I'm concerned, and I am an ordained clergy.
Okay.
I've been a member of the clergy for many, many years. They are failing our communities.
Mm-hmm.
We have 3, 4 churches on one block, but yet and still, we have babies born without a daddy in the home. Yet and still, we have black on black crime. Yet and still, 40% of nationwide operation abortions
Mm-hmm.
are killing black babies. And in New York, more black babies are murdered through abortion than are born. With all of the churches, God is not powerless, but we're not teaching the holiness of God.
Right.
God is omnipotent,
Yes.
but we don't emphasize that.
Yes.
We go to church, we turn to our neighbor and say everything's going to be all right, clap our hands, stomp our feet, sing for an hour and a half, and get out.
And there's nothing
That's
else after that.
not church.
No, it's not.
That's entertainment.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
Well,
entertainment.
You brought up something. March for Life is this Friday in Washington, D.C. And you brought up how, so many babies are being murdered in the state of New York. Yes. Can you give me you mentioned the numbers of babies that are being murdered in New York versus the ones that are being born. So how do you see it from living in New York, being from Harlem, being from the Bronx, and being in Jersey? Where are there ways for us as a church and faith believing community to rise up, to fight this, to fight these state laws so this does not happen? I mean, because you talk about the CVS and the Walgreens having the abortion pills, and there you go. And the other day, I'm going to tell you something. My husband and I prayed that the trucks carrying those abortion pills that are going to the CVS and Walgreens get flat tires and somehow get burned.
I know that's right.
I'm like, they have, know, and my husband told me a story similar to that when he was in Iraq. And I sat there and thought, you know what? For all the trucks, I pray for the truck drivers to keep them safe, but may those abortion pills going to the Walgreens and CVS somehow get lost, somehow get thrown out, because that is too available to young girls who do not need to even have access to that. That shouldn't even be at availability.
No, and these young girls shouldn't even be thinking about sex. They have sexualized our children at such young ages.
Right.
Parents really need to wake up, speak up, stand up, and protect their children from all of this perverted stuff that they're pushing into their heads.
Right.
12 and 13, what do you know about sex?
Right. Nothing. Except for what this devil shows.
Yep.
This is the devil right here for our kids.
Yep.
And those kitchen table conversations aren't happening because of that.
That's correct. That's so true, Eden. So true. I mean, it's disgraceful what's going on in America. This country was founded on Judeo-Christian values, ethics, principles.
Exactly.
Where have we taken ourselves? To the swamp?
Yeah.
I mean, it is disgusting. It is alarming.
Yes. Well, you talk about the swamp. And the swamp-like creatures in, our nation's capital, it's seeping into our waters, whether it's trickling down or trickling up to New York. It is in those pathetic and perverted waters.
Absolutely. And look at how they've invaded our school system. They've invaded our churches. Every phase of life, they've invaded with such ungodliness.
Right.
Now, I didn't even know that Walgreens and CVS had those abortion pills. You educated me. I didn't know that.
Yeah, that came out, I believe, a week and a half ago, where they are making it, where they're making it more available and more prevalent. And, as we head into March for Life, I remember when I was on the campaign trail and, everybody, all the candidates were like, well, I'm pro-life, but I'm pro-life. And I said, I'm saving our babies.
Right.
Bottom line.
Right.
Bottom line.
That's right.
And so as women of faith, we have the opportunity to rise up, just like Martin Luther King's wife did, just like his family did, rising up to fight in the public square where we need to be talking about these issues. And March for Life is such a great example.
It is.
Of that. Now, as we head into that, I know I don't want to deviate from Martin Luther King Day, but I do want to ask you one personal question. Did you ever have the opportunity to meet him or meet any of his family members?
No, I did not. And, I was expecting my first child when he was murdered. And when he had the march.
Yeah.
I wanted to go, but my husband didn't want me to go because I was expecting.
Right.
But no, I never had that privilege and that honor to meet him.
As you I'm assuming you are a grandmother as much as you are a mother. What can you share with your grandkids, especially about the journey that you took, the inspiration of what Martin Luther King has done? But one thing that keeps coming to mind as I'm hearing other commentators that are speaking to the Martin Luther King dream, are we doing it an injustice in our culture today with how the culture deterioration, culture wars are just kind of taking over?
Well, I think the race hustlers are doing a lot of damage to the good that's been accomplished because they want to ignore that. If they don't ignore it, they have no hustle. All it is a hustle. Sharp Tongue, Sly Jackson, and the whole crew of them.
Right.
They make money off of other people's perceived and contrived misery.
Right.
Not any of us have ever picked any cotton and didn't get paid.
Right.
We didn't experience that firsthand. They want us to live in the past, have anger about something that we couldn't change and God allowed.
Right.
And it's really sickening. My brothers sat at those counters when they were trying to integrate. Let's not forget about that. Let's not forget about the everyday sacrifices that everyday people made.
Right.
So that we could have the opportunities and the privileges that we have today.
Yeah.
Don't ignore history.
Right.
God has been very gracious to people who are brought here against their will. We know that.
Right.
But to a better land.
Right.
It was Phyllis Wheatley who came here as a slave. And one of her poems was, "'Twas mercy that brought me from the pagan land." What does that mean? That means she celebrated the fact that she was in America.
Yes.
She became a Christian because she was in America.
Yes.
And I wear red, white, and blue because I am proud to be an American Black right here in the land that I was born in. I'm so thankful to God that I was born here. And when you see people who are darker than me trying to get here.
Yes.
They'll sneak. They'll do anything.
To get here.
To get here.
Yes.
We must have something here that they don't have there.
Yes.
So no one is going to tell me that I should be angry with white people, that I should think about slavery day in, day out. God allowed the wickedness of man to produce something very good. And the good is, I am an American.
Amen. You know, when you talk about Phyllis Wheatley and just that phrase from what she was writing, I immediately think of Amazing Grace.
Amen. Amen. And he used to transport slaves. And he wrote Amazing Grace. And we sing that all the time.
Yes. Yes.
That's right. Oh, yeah. We have a lot to be thankful for, a lot to be grateful for. And Dr. King, he is celebrated the goodness of God in his messages.
Yes.
You know, when I see pictures of him with Malcolm X and with Obama, it makes me sick because he was a man of a different ilk.
Yeah.
He was a man who was cloaked in the righteousness of God. He was chosen by God.
Right.
To do what he did.
Yes. Yes. And so are you.
Thank you.
And, you know, I want to talk a little bit about your radio show, Our Urban Story. I want to talk a little bit to that because every Saturday on the Blue Network, Go Blue Network, all about law enforcement or first responders.
Yes.
Thanks to George Beck and the whole crew over there. I want to talk a little bit about the hour that you and BB are on the show, on the air, and how you are impacting not just Jersey, New York, and Pennsylvania, you're impacting a generation. Talk to me about some of the things that you bring to the table. And I love tuning in because it is like going to church, but it's also, you know, getting off your tuchus and actually making things happen. And, you know, I think a lot of people are all talk and have good intentions, but at the end of the day, don't necessarily have that gumption to actually do something. Whereas you and BB have the gumption to do something and you get off the tuchus and you do it, you know? So, sorry, my jersey's coming out. I can hear my mother.
That's all right. That's all right. Well, we love what we do. We love it. And, you know, this country, being that it was founded on Judeo-Christian values, many times and quite often I'll mention that because I think it's very important. We'll mention it because it's very important for us to remember from whence we came.
Right.
That foundation is the beauty of America. Is the blessing of America. And I don't want anyone to forget. And the leftists don't want to remember that because they hate God. Period.
Right.
I don't dress it up or anything like that. What we do on the radio program, we do even in real-time life. In other words, I was at a telephone store and a guy walked in there, black man. And he said, asked me how I was doing. I said, fine. And I said, how are you? Oh, I'm blessed. I'm wonderful. I'm a child of God. I said, and I bet you're a Democrat. And he says, yes, I am. I said, well, here it is. You're a child of God and you're talking about you're blessed, but do you bless God with your obedience? And how can you obey God and you vote for people that hate God?
Oh,
and he looked at me.
Pin drop, mic drop.
That man looked at me. He says, how do I know what you're saying is true? I said, well, before you vote again, do some research. I don't lie. So find out for yourself. But you can't be loving God and voting for people who hate God.
Right. Right.
Then he looked at me and he said, I'm in here about my telephone. And that was the end of the conversation.
Oh, you struck a chord.
But that's all right. That's why I'm there. That's why I say what I say.
Yeah.
I want to strike a chord.
Yeah.
I want you to go home and research. So that your heart will be open and your mind will start seeing truth for a change instead of being programmed by MSNBC and CNN and Hollywood.
I love it. I was going to say lamestream media, but you said Hollyweird. That's the best one yet.
Yes.
That's fabulous.
Yes. So it's an ongoing thing. You know, our urban story is just, it's beautiful working with the police officers, retired and active. And we've had a friendship with them for a very long time.
Yes, yes.
But we love what we do. We even had a gentleman from England that was tuning in to us. So the more the merrier. We need to get the word out. America can do better, and we will do better once we get our acts together.
Yes, and get some gumption, get on our knees and start and get in the public square and not be fearful of that. Be fearless.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's what we have to do. You know, I meet people a lot of times, you know, that go to church and all of that, and I'll challenge them. And then one young lady, I quoted 1 Corinthians 10:31, where it says, whether you eat, drink, do everything to the glory of God. Then I said, when you vote for Democrats, does that give glory to God? At any rate, she bought a copy of my book. She stayed there at the rally, and we had a wonderful time together. Just those few words.
Yes, yes.
But we have to be bold as a lion and speak them.
For such a time as this.
That's right.
For such a time as this.
That's right. That's right. I try to be graceful with it, but I'm going to speak it.
Yes. Can you hold up your book one more time? Because we're going to head over to a break, and I'm going to bring over Donna Jackson, who you know very well. Escaping the Racism of Low Expectations. Barbara from Harlem, my dear friend from Jersey and New York. I'm so grateful for you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, my darling.
And every Saturday, our urban story, go to Facebook, friend Barbara, check out the show. Bibi, her daughter, is there. A huge impact you guys are making in New York, New Jersey. And thank you for what you're doing for our first responders and our next generation.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And may God continue to bless you.
Oh, thank you. You too, my friend. I will see you soon.
All right, my dear.
All right.
Love you. God bless.
You too. Bye.
Bye-bye.
And for all of those who are tuning in, this is Common Sense America. I am Eden Hill, and we're going to be bringing right over to the show in just about 2 minutes. We're going to take a quick break. We're bringing over Donna Jackson. She is the Project 21 Director of Membership Development. Wow, this woman, she charged the Hill last week before House Energy and Commerce, and we have a lot to talk with her about, and also Martin Luther King Day, and how as we sit here and think about everything that's happening in our culture wars and what is happening in our nation's backyard, what's happening to our next generation, she's going to talk about Martin Luther King's dream and how it's being undermined by big government. So we'll be talking about that. And until then, we're going to just take a quick break and we'll be right back. And welcome back. This is Common Sense America. I am Eden Hill, and oh man, what a great day we are having here at Common Sense America. It's a very special Monday. Monday, January the 16th is Martin Luther King Day, and I have the privilege and the honor to bring over to the show Donna Jackson. She is a friend. She is a fearless woman of faith, a woman of conviction. And so we're going to bring her over to the show. Good morning. How are you?
Good morning. I'm doing great. It's a pleasure to be here with you.
Oh, thanks so much for coming over to Common Sense, and thanks for coming back. When this show started back at the end of last year, I paid tribute to you and also Barbara from Harlem and all the women of faith and women of leadership who are on the front lines fighting for our next generation. And you were one of them, and I'm so grateful. I want to get right to it. There are quite a few things that are happening in our culture today, and you charged the hill last week. I love charging the hill. I love shaking it up. I love stirring the pot. I love getting things going. And a couple things that you did last week, you went before the House Energy and Commerce Committee, and you specifically talked to how what the domestic energy will be to our American families and our Black communities. I would love if you could share a little bit about the impact that it made last week for you and what you see coming down the pike, especially as we are remembering Dr. Martin Luther King today.
The one thing that people really need to realize is that the civil rights movement was about giving people economic opportunities, and it was about making sure that people had the right to be able to pursue their dreams. It wasn't about dirty words. And that's what the left would like you to think, that it's about nasty words, but it's not that. Dr. Martin Luther King wanted us to participate in this American experience where we had the opportunity to achieve financial stability, strong Black families, and families that could economically support themselves. But what we see from progressives is the exact opposite of that. Everything this country was built on is based upon affordable energy that is able to support industry. And one of the things that you need to realize is that we created a vibrant, strong Black middle class from industrialized jobs.
Yes.
And they're doing everything they can to destroy it. In many ways, the war on fossil fuel is not only a war on minority communities and low-income families, but it's also ushered in a new green Jim Crow because the effects are exactly the same. That's what I wanted to share with the committee, giving them a realization of really what Black-owned businesses were going through because they struggle in the face of very expensive energy to actually continue to operate. And those jobs are vital. Think about a group of people who have lower educational rates where they're not participating in the keyboard industry. They need to be able to start their own businesses, which again, those industrialized jobs actually create that opportunity for them to support the individuals working in those industries as well. And they also need the opportunity to be able to afford to live in their communities. Everything is heavily impacted by energy. And so when you commit a war on energy, you're basically making sure that it's now not race, but unaffordability that's keeping people more segregated out of the housing market. And the impact is exactly the same as Jim Crow.
So let me ask you something. I heard in one of your interviews last week, and I am going to not do it justice on the perfection of the exact quote, but something you said. You mentioned how the communities themselves are already struggling. And then in addition to that, it's like they can't even get their checks, they live from check to check, but they're not even living from paycheck to paycheck now. They are buying. In addition, they are trying to get extra credit to, just get by to that next paycheck. And, if that is happening in our nation's backyard, what are we to do in regards to this whole green energy aspect? I have running across the screen, and I want to put this quote out there. You stated, in so many ways, plentiful and affordable domestic energy is part of the ticket out of poverty and dependence. For example, we see the entrepreneurial spirit of Black communities and many Black-owned small businesses, but those businesses struggle and sometimes fail. So what are we to do as the American people? What are we to do to uplift these communities all across our nation and our nation's backyard? What are we to do as the American people? And speaking to my kitchen table, my friend's kitchen table, the moms, the single moms, the single dads, the retirees, what are we to do?
Well, first of all, we need to recognize the harms that these energy policies are creating. There's so much talk about how they do all these environmental impact studies,
right,
and how it affects the climate.
right.
But nobody's doing an economic impact study and how it's destroying communities.
Right.
If you looked at the climate change policies, they're more detrimental to the health of minority and low-income communities than actually dirty air, because the biggest threat to minority communities is poverty. I was mentioning that a lot of times you hear that middle-class families are living paycheck to paycheck.
Yeah.
Low income and minority communities are not living paycheck to paycheck. They're living paycheck to Wednesday or midweek.
Yes.
Or week.
Yes.
And
yes.
then they're having to borrow money from friends, from neighbors, from high interest loan places in order to be able to make it to the next paycheck. So they're actually starting off with negative income before they even get to the next pay period. That's what happened with a lot of sharecroppers back in the day, where they would be working and then they actually owe money for working, not even meeting their minimum standards of their cost of living expenses.
Right.
They're coming into in the hole just by going to work and putting their efforts there.
Right.
And we're in the solution for these climate change activists and progressives is to make energy more unaffordable so we can get further in the hole. Basically, what you have is these green energy policies creating a barrier so that those in the lowest rungs of society can never work themselves out. And they're using, I say there's two ways that we build big government.
Sure.
Poor and the poor. So the more people we have that are dependent on government programs, the bigger we can build the government. But they don't benefit from any of the money allocated for the poor. It's these activists, it's these lawyers, it's these academias that benefit, while the poor just struggle more and more. And so they can never work their way out of poverty. It is important to realize that Martin Luther King was not marching so that people wouldn't use dirty words.
Right.
He marched so we can have economic opportunity and upward mobility. That was the agenda. And what green activists are doing is to make sure that those opportunities don't exist.
So do you think, and is this in your recommendation, do you think that this is just one example of Martin Luther King's dream being undermined by big government?
100%. And it's on purpose. Some people try to convince me that it's unintended. I doubt that.
Oh my goodness. I don't believe that for a second.
For a second, I go to Boston.
Millisecond. Not even. I mean, come on.
When you drive through the one thing that I stress with this committee, I said, listen to this. Drive through the streets of Baltimore, Chicago, Detroit. You'll see 60 years worth of liberal economic policies that don't work. In fact, they destroy communities.
Yeah.
And now all of a sudden, you're telling me today that this time is going to be different? It's not.
Mm-mm.
The intention is the same. Environmental justice is what you get when elite white liberals create an agenda for Black people that we didn't ask for and tell us to fall in line and do what we're told. And they spend all of their time raking the money out of the community, getting money on behalf of the community and never helping them, because that's the intention. It's not a war on poverty. It's a war for poverty to create more of it.
Where's the money go? Where's the money go?
Oh my God. Do you know that it's going to activists, it's going to academia, and it's going to lawyers, environmental lawyers. Do you know that just in the Inflation Reduction Act, they allocated $60 billion? I want you to understand this. $60 billion is equivalent to the market capitalization of Ford Motor Company worldwide that employs more than 200,000 people. And it is responsible for countless small businesses. And yet, none of that money will actually see the minority communities. That's also equipped. They made a big to-do out of the 1921 Tulsa riots.
Right.
That's with $60 billion. If you adjusted it for inflation today, you could actually build 2,000 Black Wall Streets all around the country. That means that basically you would have nobody in poverty.
Right.
The truth of the matter is, the best we'll ever see, maybe, is some retrofittings.
All I see is Corvettes running through my head, but that's all I'll say to that.
But those Corvettes are not even going to minorities.
Exactly. Exactly.
They're not even, they created economic policies like asset limits. So if you participate in any government program, they have an asset limit. Do you know that for most people, that limit is $2,000 to maybe $3,000? I'm not saying that's what you can have a year in assets. That's what you can have for the entirety in assets. That includes savings. That includes investments. That includes your car, any jewelry, any money you got in your bank account.
Right.
So of course, you have more poverty when they've created laws that actually force you not to be able to get yourself out. You can't save any money. You have to spend every dollar you have. You can't own any property, which is the gateway into the middle class. You can't even have enough money for an emergency.
Right.
So you have people who are constantly living in survival mode. And they figured out a way to use these climate change policies to create more of this poverty. And they're doing it on the backs of low income and minority households.
And that's not freedom at all. That's not one nation under God. That is not at all.
I say with liberals, slavery is ended, but it's not in their mind. Slavery is still going on, and they control and micromanage the lives of minorities by creating more of these big governments, because if they have a lot of regulations, then they have control over you. Financial freedom means freedom.
Yes.
Because you can determine your own fate. But as long as you have to depend on the government for what you need, then they determine what behavior you're allowed and what behavior you're not allowed.
Sounds very socialism, like socialism.
It's socialism on steroids.
Yeah.
I mean, they created this experiment with the minority communities, and now they're filtering it out to everyone. That's what they did. They figured out it worked, and then they blackmail the rest of Americans by putting justice, so that people are so afraid to question what they're doing that they don't pay attention to the wrongs and ill and destruction they're causing. And that was one of the things I brought out to the committee members.
Yeah.
I mean, they were really surprised to realize that, we weren't asking for environmental justice.
Right.
That the biggest threat to us is not dirty air, it's poverty. That we were living on so little, and they're making sure that we live on even less. They don't want us to have disposable income. They don't want us to save. They don't want us to own property, because then you can increase the size of the government.
Mm.
The only thing all of these programs actually do is build bigger buildings,
Yeah.
but it doesn't pull anyone out. It actually creates a barrier to
Yeah.
stop you from getting out of poverty. And we have to fight against. I don't want to hear people discussed about whether electric charging stations are necessary or not.
Oh my goodness, don't get me started.
In a community that can't, number one, they can't afford the car. Because the median income for Black Americans, I need people to understand this. This is pre-tax. On a nationwide basis, is $48,000. That's approximately $3,500, maybe $3,500 most people are living on for the month. If you look at places like Detroit, it's $20,961. That means $1,700 is what people are living on.
Mm.
At the height of when gasoline was the most expensive, it was $5.20 a gallon. Imagine, think about, that's a lot of money if you got a 20-gallon tank, right?
Yes.
So you're spending over $100.
Yes.
And your paycheck is $400 pre-tax, right? $400 pre-tax, you're spending $100. So, and then that's not talking about food that's inflated. That's
right.
not talking about kids that might need clothes.
Right.
That's talking about medicine you need.
Exactly.
So
exactly.
You're talking about people that you've taken from hopelessness to total despair. One in 3 households struggle with their energy bills. That's according to the Energy Information Administration. The government said that. 1 in 5 is making a decision if they can eat, have food, or buy medicine for their kids.
It's like 1 out of the 3.
And for African Americans, it was double that. Double. So you're talking about the vast majority of African Americans every day making really life and death decisions because the cost of energy is so expensive.
Let me ask you something. Something that was put out in the press release about Dr. King for today's Martin Luther King Day, but it said Project 21 recently released a second edition of its blueprint for a better deal for Black America that contained 56 recommendations encompassing areas including criminal justice, education, healthcare, and election integrity. Can you share a little bit about the blueprint for a better deal for Black America with Project 21? And for the audience tuning in, whether it's here in North Carolina, upstate New York, or across the country, share a little bit about the forward thinking of the blueprint.
Yeah, I mean, I actually have a copy right here.
Fabulous. That was well planned.
A lot of people complain and they talk about different areas. We identify multiple areas in there: criminal justice, education, critical race theory, and we give you the history of those, how it's affecting all of Americans, and then recommendations that any legislator can put into action immediately. One of our big areas, like energy and regulation. And I talked a little bit about, repealing there's different aspects. They want to make limits on gasoline, how much ethanol, things like that. We talk about healthcare, taxes and spending. And one of the things that we talk about is that Black Americans should be able to save money. You can't save money if you're low income and participate in these programs.
Exactly.
So a marriage penalty.
Yes.
You know that if Black Americans, 2 low income Americans, and there's always a synergy when you have a marriage and households are more stable. But if you have 2 low income individuals that don't make $1 more, their second income, if they get married, is taxed at 70%. 70. So what we have in our big government is discouraging two-parent households. Because if I didn't make one penny, you got a husband and a wife married with the same income, and now that second income is 70%. 70% is gone. Why would I marry? And that's why you have so many single-parent households.
Yes.
Identify that and say we should repeal the marriage penalty. And it's only low-income people that are penalized. That's the reason why I say that they're building big government on the backs of low-income individuals. That, you know, the only people that really benefit, I say, is the Volvo class and the politicians who, you know,
Right.
their nonprofits in the name of helping Black people, but it never sees Black people.
Yeah, they're smoking their stogies and drinking their gin.
Yeah. Yes. Every now and then they give a backpack out.
Yeah. Yeah. Just to check the box, right?
Yeah. And so I told them, like, we really don't need another government program.
No.
But what we don't need is the government making more regulations that actually create a barrier so we can't bring ourselves out of poverty.
Right.
Because that's exactly what happens.
Yeah.
The more regulations you add, the larger the burden is on small and minority communities to be able to comply. And we don't have the resources in our businesses to be able to deal with that. I mean, they're not, you know, these exercise and paperwork, and then it's also this fear that people have. And then you end up having small businesses go out of business. And so that's what we're saying. Don't repeal a lot of these regulations. Over-regulations benefit big businesses.
Right.
And majority of minority businesses are small business, 96%.
Yes.
And so what they're doing is making sure they destroy they're making sure they destroy any ability of someone who wants to do better to do better. And so that's the reason why we put a blueprint out for a better deal. They can't complain and say they don't know what they're asking us.
Sure. But let me ask you this really quickly. This will be my last question before I let you go, but I could talk with you all day and we could really do some damage. Let's shake it up and stir it. But my question to you with the blueprint for a better deal for Black America is removing the federal government umbrella and taking it back to the states. Do you see states across the nation, more power back to the states, right? Do you see states across the nation that are really rising up to prevent some of the big government takeover where the Black communities do have the opportunity to grow? Because you mentioned New York, Chicago, Detroit, some of those cities that are just destructive. But are there states that stand out to you that are opportunities for Black businesses, Black entrepreneurship communities to grow and be removed out of that such low class lifestyle and be able to save again?
It's amazing, but the red states actually provide the best opportunities. Minorities actually thrive in red states because they don't have all the regulations, because they don't have this pretense of like California, where they'll bring multiple lawsuits against a building project actually to create artificial scarcity in the housing market so Black people can't move in, or more segregated neighborhoods. Places like Texas, places like Alabama, places like Florida. Those are places where Black people are able to thrive. Even South Carolina is doing so much better. Black people might, when you hear Black people, and these are the activists that are complaining about blue states, but if you look at what is happening, most minorities are moving to red states because that's where they have the best opportunity for upward mobility.
And freedom.
Yes. And so, a lot of these states, and Black people do not believe in critical race theory. They don't want their kids to be told that, you know what, despite the fact that all the progress we've made, you have no chance of ever being anything, and that you need someone else's permission to thrive. And they also realize that you have a state like California where they've put more money into education, but they're graduating people of color with the 4th grade reading level. 70% of the African Americans and minorities are illiterate.
That sounds like Michigan too.
And Michigan is like that. Illinois is like that. They've actually, in Illinois, I talked to a bunch of teachers, not teachers, right? That were not conservatives, liberals, that actually are coming to me for help, where they've closed down all of these Black schools, and they reduced the number of African American teachers from 40% to 4%, and they prevented them, made it illegal for them to teach spelling or phonics, so that they actually had people come into the buildings and throw out all the books on reading, on teaching phonics, and they made it illegal for them to teach the kids how to read.
What did they do? Bring in a bunch of drag queens?
They
like seriously,
they brought in all of these. She said all these guys that they had a police wagon outside. So if any teacher objected, that they were going to huddle, and then they had these guys go classroom to classroom, search through all their stuff, throw out any Dr. Seuss or any of these kind of phonic type books, any reading, any spelling, and prohibit them from teaching spelling and phonics. So are we surprised? We're graduating 70% of our classrooms that are illiterate.
Not surprised at all. It kind of reminds me of a contact of ours and a friend of mine in Rhode Island, a school teacher up there. She was basically put in teacher jail, and because she was fighting the CRT curriculum, and she was an English teacher, and she wanted to fight for her children and fight for the next generation to teach them, the important things like reading and writing. And you know what? How many know how to do cursive anymore? I mean, they know how to text on their phone and talk into their phone, but they don't know how to have a conversation and look straight in the eye and say, and hear the inflection in people's voices and see the expressions. They don't know how to do that anymore. But I could go on and rant for days.
They don't have any understanding of what they're reading.
No,
they're not even reading at a 4th grade reading level. I mean, they're not reading at a 4th grade reading level. But I say that this was intentional because that means you can't read contracts. Right. That means you don't understand property rights. And so then they can come in and basically take over your community. And that's what we're seeing.
Yeah, that's the bottom line. On that note, we have gone over the time because this has been such a fascinating conversation with you and Barbara from Harlem. And man, I'm so grateful for you. I am so grateful for the power of your voice. And I can't wait to see you charge the hill yet again. Shake up, wake them up, wake that sleeping giant, because there is a ton of work that needs to be done. So Donna Jackson, the Director of Membership Development for Project 21 Black Leadership Network. What an honor. Many blessings to you, sister. I am so just amazed and in awe of you. So thank you for what you're doing.
Thank you for having me.
I look forward to having you back, and we can have some more coffee and chat and take over the world and save it. How's that sound?
I'm 100% in.
All right, that sounds good. We'll drag Barbara in too, and her daughter BB. We'll make it happen. Yeah. So on that note, thank you so much for joining Common Sense America. I am Eden Hill. Until then, we'll see you later in the week, and have a blessed Martin Luther King Day. Be strong, be courageous, stand firm in your faith, and pray and keep praying. Until then, we'll see you then. Have a great day, and many blessings to you all.
Thank you.